Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo. Thank you for choosing the magnificent Mongo Slave for all your wrestling information and content. Like, share, and subscribe. Now let's get into the video. Hey, how y'all doing? So I was doing some research and I came across the concept of stolen valor. It's this illegal thing where if you're in the United States military and you lie about your rank or you lie about your kills or you lie about the missions that you were in, it's called stolen valor. It's also more specifically used for people who were never in the military who said that they were. So technically, even though lying is protected by the First Amendment, certain kinds of lying, of course, are illegal, and stolen valor is one of them. And so I was thinking about what kind of concept would be the equivalent of stolen valor in wrestling terms. And the best I could come up with is when people make themselves champions. And we see right now where Moose is running around with the TNA World Heavyweight title, even though TNA does not exist anymore, and he's calling himself a world champion of a place that doesn't exist. And you got MVP. He's running around with the U.S. title, with the new redesigned U.S. championship because he pinned Apollo Crews. So he's saying like, I'm the uncrowned champion, and it's only a matter of time anyway. But historically, it's always been a really fun thing for a guy to take a title and elevate himself. Throughout history, it's always been heels that have done this because it only really makes hits when heels do it because it's a delusional thing, right? It's an arrogance thing. So for people who haven't been watching Impact, Moose has been feuding with. He was wrestling various undercard Impact guys, most of whom I do not remember. That Chase dude from that one tag team, and a bunch of other people. He was just pinning them in because Moose wins in most of the matches that he's in, but Moose doesn't get a lot of world title matches. So he basically found this TNA world title after he found it during their TNA reunion episode of Impact, which was a couple of months ago. I'm stickler about dates. It's July 2020, so a couple of months previous will probably be like April. So he's he's been kind of defending it ever since. He's been bullying people into recognizing that he's a TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and now TNA is actually starting to sort of accept. Well, I keep calling them TNA. Impact Wrestling is sort of now promoting his matches as TNA World Heavyweight Championship matches, which is his match with Tommy Dreamer at Slammiversary is going to be a TNA World Heavyweight Championship match, which of course makes no sense because TNA doesn't exist anymore. Now, MVP, for people who haven't been watching Raw, MVP tried to recruit Apollo Crews, who was the United States champion. He tried to recruit Apollo Crews into his stable with Lashley. Apollo Crews denied him, so Apollo Crews and MVP had a match. Lashley helped MVP win, so he pinned Apollo Crews. So then MVP, brings out the redesigned United States Championship. He's just been carrying it around, basically, sort of taunting Apollo Crews, saying, "Hey, so it was only a matter of time, because this Sunday, July the 18th, July the 19th. I'm sorry, that he's going to win the title anyway. So he's just carrying it around." Now, also, you have the FTW Championship, which was the Taz Championship that I believe Brian Cage defended on AEW Dark. I haven't watched the match yet, but I think he's defending the title. Now, for people who haven't been watching AEW, which I'm pretty sure most people are, Brian Cage was given Taz's FTW Championship. And I have to go back and explain what the FTW Championship is. Okay, so in ECW, Taz was on a killing spree. He was beating everybody. He was intimidating. He was destroying people. And Shane Douglas was the world heavyweight champion. And Shane Douglas had some legitimate injuries and had some legitimate ailments that made him miss scheduled title matches. So ECW decided, because they always make chicken salad out of chicken shit, they decided to utilize that. So the Taz character sort of created his own championship. Being ECW, it was named something edgy, fuck the world championship. And Taz started sort of recognizing himself as a champion, even though he wasn't one. And because the title was not recognized by ECW. And it was his way of mocking Shane Douglas and trying to get Shane Douglas into to fight him for the title, or fight him for, if you're scared to fight me for my title or whatever. And it ended up with Taz becoming the champion and abandoning the belt anyway. But that's not the point. The point is, And Taz resurrected this FTW championship in AEW. And then he decided that he was going to give it to Brian Cage because Jon Moxley's wife has COVID. And because, of course, he lives with his wife, he's had contact with her, even though he doesn't have it. And they're saying that basically the story is that Taz believes that Jon Moxley is full of shit and that he's trying to hide from Brian Cage. And so he gave Cage this FTW championship. Of course, it makes less sense now because the match was only pushed back 1 week. I mean, I can't believe you're so impatient. So I'm recording this video actually the day of Fight for the Fallen, which is actually in a couple of hours. So, and Brian Cage did he really need to have the FTW championship? It doesn't matter. But Taz actually did lose the FTW championship, though. He lost it to, it was unrecognized, but he basically gave the belt to Sabu. It was a match where he kind of destroyed Sabu, and yet he pulled Sabu on top of him. He got pinned, and then he gave the physical title to Sabu, who then notoriously put tape on the belt because Taz's name was on the actual belt because nobody else was supposed to have it. He put tape over Taz's name and wrote his name on the tape because Sabu's a maniac. But of course, the most famous of the sort of stolen valor championships, I guess you could rate them, but probably the most famous for most people is the $1 Million Championship from Ted DiBiase. So you had Ted DiBiase, who was chasing Hulk Hogan for the WWF title. He couldn't win. Andre the Giant actually beat Hulk Hogan for the title in a very fluky bullshit way at the main event. Then Ted DiBiase tries to buy the WWF title from Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant sells him the title. Then the bureaucracy steps in and says, you can't sell a championship. And the title is vacated. Wrestlemania 8. There's the big tournament. Ted DiBiase loses that tournament and just says, fuck it, I'm out of here. You know, he chases Randy Savage for a little while with a title, and he just says, fuck it, I'm going to create my own belt. And he creates the $1 Million Championship. And it is one of the best gimmicks in wrestling history, of course, because it's unrecognized, and his character is so that things don't apply to him anyway. He thinks that, you know, he's rich, so he lives in a different world. And he's a champion, and he's, you know, deciding whether people should, you know, deserve a match for his title or not. Now, Ted DiBiase also, of course, lost the $1 Million Championship in a match, sort of weirdly enough. He lost it to Virgil, who was his butler or chauffeur or whatever the hell. So that was a really great moment, though. You know, a lot of people hate Virgil, and I'm in that sort of group. He's just nothing. But it was such a fantastic moment for Virgil to finally sort of overcome Ted DiBiase and beat Ted DiBiase in a match, even though it was with some help. He pinned him, and that was sort of his reward for beating Ted DiBiase, is that he won the $1 Million Championship. I don't remember how Ted DiBiase got it back from Virgil. Not really sure how that happened. But of course, we know that Ted DiBiase also gave it to the ringmaster, who ended up being Stone Cold Steve Austin. And he also gave it to Ted Jr., who wrestled in Legacy in the late or the early 2010s, 2009, 2010, somewhere abouts. And the title, of course, hasn't been seen since. But these sort of unrecognized championships are really fun gimmicks. And sometimes, you know, probably up there, along with the $1 Million Championship, of course, is when people have things like they're calling themselves champions. And Ric Flair. Ric Flair is probably one of the best. When Ric Flair jumped to the WWF in 1991, I think he was still the NWA World Champion. He had, or he had just lost it, or something to that effect. But he still had possession of the physical NWA Big Gold Belt. And so he debuts on WWF TV as the real world's champion, confronting Hulk Hogan, telling Hulk Hogan, I've been the real world's champion this whole time. You're not a real world's champion, blah, 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 blah. And it was a great heat magnet. And of course, NWA sued and got the belt back. And so they started doing weird stuff like with the blurry tag title. It was so silly. But it was ultimately a great way of getting Flair over. And of course, it led to Flair actually winning the WWF title. So it was awesome. And that's usually how it's supposed to end. It's supposed to end with the unrecognized champion winning the actual title that they were supposed to be chasing. Otherwise, it's just going on in perpetuity, and there's just no real reason for it to stop. And that brings us to Zack Ryder's Internet Championship. Now, this was created basically for his YouTube channel. It wasn't created for any other reason. So Zack Ryder having a difficult time even getting on TV, let alone winning the championship. He was an undercard guy, nobody cared, but he got really, really over on the internet. So he started calling himself the Internet Championship, and then he did. It got over really big, and because he was an underdog, he was a sympathetic underdog, and but this sort of concept of being delusional is that Zack Ryder created this entire mythos around the Internet Championship, where he was like this super badass. I think that the Internet Championship official mythos is that Zack Ryder won a 64-man tournament in 72 hours or something like that, and he beat all these various guys to call himself the Internet Champion. And it's the same pattern as all these other things where Zack Ryder is in a position where he has been fighting and scratching, chasing, trying to get on TV, and it wouldn't happen. Now, of course, it ended up really getting Zack Ryder over, and Zack Ryder ended up winning the United States title. I think it was in 2011 or 2012, and he became, he kind of didn't need it anymore. Now, the gimmick, of course, began on the internet. It brought itself into his wrestling persona. Then he actually got on TV, and he actually won a championship, so he didn't need to call himself the Internet Champion anymore. But now he's bringing it back. So, Zack Ryder's been one of those people that was fired in April. It's not as fun or as funny to still be woo, 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 I'm the Internet Champion at 40. It's just not as cool. It's not as funny. It's not as interesting. But I like this. I like the concept of the stolen valor situation, of a guy having a title that he says is his, or during a title chase, and it's actually a recurring thing in the wrestling business, and it's fun. It's very interesting. But what do you guys think? I know there's got to be some out there that I haven't been thinking about. I know Shawn Michaels is another one. The Intercontinental Championship. Shawn Michaels suspended for being on steroids, though he claimed he was never doing steroids. And while he was out, Razor Ramon won a tournament to be crowned the Intercontinental Champion. When Shawn came back, he refused to recognize that Razor Ramon was the Intercontinental Champion. And then they had the epic match at Wrestlemania 10, the double ladders. Not the double ladders, goddammit, the double championship ladder match. And that was awesome, And I think they're going to do a similar thing with Santos Escobar and Jordan Devlin in NXT. For people who don't know, maybe you haven't been watching NXT, Santos Escobar, who is El Hijo del Fantasma, he won the Cruiserweight tournament. The tournament happened because Jordan Devlin is from Europe, and Europe has been in lockdown for months and months and months. Apparently, they're never going to get out of lockdown, and due to, of course, COVID. And Jordan Devlin was the Cruiserweight champion, and he couldn't defend, so they said, we're going to create an interim championship. And now Fantasma, who is now Santos Escobar, is the Cruiserweight champion in America, and Jordan Devlin is the Cruiserweight champion in Europe. So they're obviously going to have some kind of competing situation. And you also had another one that I just remember off the top of my head is John Cena and CM Punk. So another thing, well, this was very interesting, because everybody knows that CM Punk won the WWE Championship at Money in the Bank in 2012. He beat John Cena for the title. And then CM Punk's contract expired, so he left. He refused to re-sign. This is, of course, in storyline. So they had a tournament for the title. The tournament was won by Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio became the WWE Champion. Later that day, he won it, I think, in the beginning of Raw. And then he was challenged to a title match by John Cena. John Cena beat Rey Mysterio for the title, which is not a very babyface thing to do, to challenge a guy who just had a match. It's kind of silly. But John Cena was the WWE champion. And then after that, you had CM Punk return. So CM Punk returned at the end of the tournament to sort of, as John Cena was, happily parading around with the WWE title because he thinks he's the champion. And CM Punk returns as the legitimate champion. And they had their match at SummerSlam, which CM Punk then won to, become the undisputed WWE champion, and then was immediately beaten by Alberto Del Rio, who cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase, and everything turned to shit. So, but I know there has to be some more out there that I'm not thinking of, and plus I haven't watched everything possible. So let me know in the comment section if you guys think that there is something that I'm missing out on. Like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about this situation.